sleeve, arm in the sleeve.
Just looking for the best color in here, blue. Yeah, looking for a blue. And one blue. I think at some point someone said, I got an idea. Let's put all the worst colors inside this bag. No one likes yellow. No one likes orange. Now I have to clean that shit up. Off to go train arms. Yeah, okay. When you catch my lip in there and I'm gonna start bleeding, we're gonna know why. Brady and I are going to bro out, go train some arms. I bet you on prep, I was so light that if I held these, I'd fly away. Easiest way to be a YouTuber, mess around with like knobs and door handles and opening and closing doors and key ignitions and driving and just cut the scene really quick. Kind of like this. All right, so let's get into the workout. We did this entire arm day on one cable station, and I'm gonna have the whole workout linked in the description box below if you wanna give this a shot. But I'm gonna talk about some tips and cues on some of the movements we're performing and how you are able to hit all different heads of the bicep and tricep just using this one cable station. And I'm not saying that this is the most effective way to hit your arms. Free weights are great, preacher curl machines, all that is good stuff. But if you only have a cable station available to you, this is what you can do in order to make sure you get the most out of the workout. So we started with a typical standing cable curl using a straight bar. You can use any bar you want, whatever handle you prefer. The main goal is to make sure you're hitting your biceps. You're actually feeling them work. And the reason I like cable so much is because throughout the entire range, there's going to be constant tension on the muscle. Now, as far as proper form goes, a lot of times you'll see this movement right here. So we're thinking about keeping the shoulder blades back and down. So retracting like this, elbows locked in at the sides, and just performing a curl without anything else moving. Some people actually perform them this way and feel it more in their biceps. You can notice how my elbows are coming forward a little bit. My shoulders are not back and down. Now, you might actually feel this more in your bicep. So I would say experiment with the two different variations and see where you're feeling the muscle work the most. Next up, we got the tricep press down using a straight bar, and this is something I've been experimenting with. I use the V-bar sometimes or the rope, but the straight bars just felt really good over my last couple of workouts, so I'm sticking with that. And this is kind of the same cues as the bicep curl. What you want to do is keep yourself locked into place. Elbows are staying at my sides, but make sure you're using that full range of motion. So notice how my forearm touches my bicep, and then I press down, squeeze hard at lockout, and come back up and repeat. The one thing you want to avoid with this exercise is a limited range of motion. So you might see people stop at 90 degrees like this in an attempt to keep tension on the tricep, but what that's doing is actually putting a lot of stress on the elbow joint. So if you're experiencing any pain like that, I would suggest going through a full range of motion, fully lengthening the tricep, and then shortening it completely by locking out and squeezing hard at lockout. So one thing to keep in mind. Another thing, if the weight gets a bit heavy or you start to fatigue, there's nothing wrong with controlled cheating like you see here. So I'm using a bit of momentum to get the weight down. But remember, even if you're using that momentum or cheating a little bit, the form should still stay strict. Next up was just a rope hammer curl. So you can notice we're using a neutral grip or our palms facing each other, and this is really going to target the brachialis muscle and the brachioradialis. And it's important to note that the brachialis does not help with supination or pronation of the forearm, but it is the strongest elbow flexor, and that's why we wanted to incorporate some neutral grip curls. So the hammer curl is a perfect way to do that. Again, the form stays strict, elbows stay to the sides, and if you want to hit the forearms a little bit more while doing this, squeeze the rope as hard as you can while curling. Next tricep movement is going to be the overhead rope extension, and the goal of this exercise is to target the long head of the triceps, and you do that by having your arms overhead and your shoulders in a more flexed position. And this is similar to a skull crusher or a French press with a dumbbell. So you'll notice that if you do press downs, it's going to target more of the outer head that you might see during a side tricep pose, and then if you do an overhead movement like this one here, you're going to target more of the long head. Now remember, the goal of this workout was to fully train all heads of the bicep and tricep, so by using different handles, different variations, and different positions, we're able to do that. Next bicep exercise we have is the Bayesian curl, and this is somewhat similar to an incline dumbbell curl as it allows you to get a fully stretched bicep. And what I really like about this exercise, aside from the fact that there is constant tension because of the cables, and that's something that you wouldn't get from a barbell or a dumbbell, the main thing is that by changing your distance from the cable pulley, you can actually change the resistance curve. So the further you step away from the cables, the more resistance there will be at the bottom or at the start of the movement. So if you've never tried this exercise before, I would definitely recommend giving it a shot. And the one thing to keep in mind, and this is similar to an an incline dumbbell curl is to not go too heavy. I see a lot of people take advantage of that stretch reflex at the bottom of the movement, but when your biceps in that fully lengthened position, if you go too heavy, you could risk injuring or tearing your biceps. So just go light on it, get the full stretch, get the full contraction, and remember to vary your distance from the cable stack. So the further away you go, the harder it's going to be at the beginning of the movement. As it gets harder, you could step closer to the pulleys and change the resistance curve on that. So definitely give this one a shot. Next up is actually a pretty cool tricep drop set that I picked up from Ben Pekulski, and this has to do with your positioning from the cable, similar to the Bayesian curl like I just explained. So with this exercise, when the cable is at 90 degrees to your arm, that's when the exercise is going to be the hardest and the cable will be exerting the most amount of force. So that means that the lockout is going to be the most difficult the further you are away from the cable stack. Now you could turn this into a drop set by working that end range, so standing far away, performing your reps, and as you start to fatigue, step closer and closer to the cable stack, and that's going to make the lockout easier and the beginning of the movement harder. So the one thing to keep in mind is that if your arm is completely straight with the cable, there's going to be little to no resistance at your tricep. And when you're at a 90-degree position, so when the cable is at 90 degrees to your arm, that's when it's going to be the most difficult. So to give you a better example, as I step closer to the cable stack and you see me perform the movement and lock out, the distance from the cable to my arm is very different than how it was when I was stepping further away. So you can see the picture on the left is closer to the cable stack and there's less of a right angle from the cable to my arm, whereas on the right, there's more of a right angle. So on the left, the lockout is going to be easier. On the right, the lockout is going to be more difficult. And then we can go ahead and take one step even closer to the cable stack, making this part of the movement right here the most difficult, so midway through. So the lockout's going to be the easiest as you're closer to the stack, and the beginning of the movement's going to be harder. So we're going to run through it for you guys real quick. This is the hardest at lockout, standing far away from the cable stack. We're going to do that until we completely fatigue ourselves. We're going to step forward, making this a little bit easier at lockout and a little bit harder midway through. And then as we step even closer to the cable stack and get right up against it, the hardest part of the movement is going to be right there at the beginning, initiating it, and the lockout's going to be the easiest part because remember, the cable is in a straight line with our arm and there's almost no right angle formed. So definitely give this drop set a shot. All right, so moving on to the final biceps exercise. And remember, the goal was to do as much as we can with what we had available to us, and that was just a cable stack. So what we're doing here is a cable curl, and you might see some people perform it this way or with two arms, but in order to get the most out of this movement, we actually want to curl behind the head because the biceps are actually a weak shoulder flexor. So if you keep that elbow really high and you curl behind your head, externally rotating and squeezing the biceps, you'll get them as short as possible, which is what we want to do. We want to lengthen muscles and then we want to shorten them. So since the biceps are weak shoulder flexor, we're going to put ourselves into that flexed shoulder position, curl behind the head, squeeze, and then fully lengthen and repeat. And to finish up the workout, we wanted to do one more tricep exercise. So what we did was a superset. As soon as we finished the cable curls, we dropped down and did some close grip push-ups to failure. All right, at this point, your arm should be so filled with blood that you should not be able to do a tricep flex or really even hit a bicep pose like this hurts right now to do. So I want you guys to give this workout a shot. You know, we came into the gym and it was overly crowded and we were just coming for arms as an accessory day. Usually this might even be an off day, but we wanted to get a good workout. Try this out, include supersets, include drop sets. If you're really short on time, you can get this whole workout done in a half hour. And we did it all with just this area right over here. So you don't need a ton of preaching curl machines, you don't need special machines. Are those things beneficial? Yes, but that doesn't mean that you cannot get a full workout hitting every head of your tricep, hitting both heads of the bicep, with just limited equipment. So if you really want to challenge yourself, at the end of all of it, try and do an AMRAP on push-ups and see how many you can get. I'm lucky if I get 20 right now. I'm gonna try and get 40. Okay. I can't even like bend my arm right now. All right, form please, I'm a little tired.
53. You gotta
get 60.
make it a round number, yeah.
Three more.
3 more. Good.
If you do try this out, come back, revisit the video, leave a comment, and let me know what you think.